All right. All right. Welcome to, Monday, August 11th. Good grief. Time just flies. Um, welcome to the HEF podcast. That's the podcast of the Home Education Foundation. The Home Education Foundation is an organization that was started by the beloved Brenda Dickinson back in and her husband Craig Dickinson back in the early 1990s. And for you young ones, that was quite some time ago. We're not going to talk about how long ago that was because I was around for that, and that ages all of us. So it might seem like it was ancient times, but I guarantee you there were no horses and buggies. It was it was kind of modern. Um, no, we did not have cell phones. But Brenda and her husband were pioneers in the early home education movement, and that was a little bit different than the way homeschooling had been done throughout the country up until that point, where you had to register with a private school, start a private school in your own home, and then call it homeschooling. Brenda thought parents need the direct right to educate their own children as they see fit. And so she worked with her husband, and they got the attention of Representative Daniel Webster at the time to fight for home education and get a bill put together that would put home education in statute. And that is how in Florida we do it a little different in the free state of Florida. And a lot of that is because of the work of Brenda Dickinson. And so we're very thankful for her, and we're thankful to have her with us again today. We're also thankful to have our top sponsors backing us. We really appreciate all of their support. Without them, we wouldn't have the support that we need. So we're extremely thankful for them. Unfortunately, for all of the work that we do, and we never charge for any of our services or advocacy for parents when we get involved, we simply do it because it is work that needs to be done, and then we try to raise funds. We don't yet have the full support of the home education community behind us, so we're extremely thankful for the top sponsors that we have. Arete, a cybersecurity firm, believes in the freedoms that we hold dear, and FPEA, that's the Florida Parent Educators Association, has been there for quite some time, and they also are at the forefront of the home education community. Fisher Precious Metals and TBHC Group, which throws the Tampa Bay Homeschool Conference each year, come alongside of us and show big support. And they are truly how we get things done around here. We are, however, in the middle of a fundraising opportunity. So if that is you and you haven't yet supported us, now is your chance. You can go big for the month of August. We have a donor who has agreed to do a $6,000 match. So if we can raise $6,000 in support, they'll donate $6,000 as a match, and every little bit helps. So I was doing the math, and excuse me, all we need is 50 families who will donate at the $10 a month tier, and commit to that monthly commitment. And in the year, that would amount to $6,000, and they'll go ahead and front the match for that. And so we're running this campaign in the month of August. So if you are currently a supporter, we love you and we thank you so much for being with us. You truly make what we do possible. And for those who have been thinking about it, now is the perfect time to stop thinking about it and start doing it, because with the match here, you can basically double what your intent would be. If you think, man, I can only do a little, we'll do the little and let someone else match that, and it'll all add up in the end. So either way, thank you for being home education families. Thank you for loving your children enough to take their education on for yourself and to pour into their hearts and minds before setting them off in the world to be grown adults. It truly, customized education is truly the best education possible. So, Brenda, good day. I was going to say good morning, and I caught it right at the end. How are you
Good.
today?
I'm doing great. How are you? How are you?
I'm well. I keep having this weird cough. Just try to clear my throat, so I may have to mute myself at some point. But I'm doing good. We've been busy. We've been very very busy,
I know
traveling
the feeling.
around. Yeah, you've been traveling quite a bit too. You've got with taking a step back from having to do all of the homeschooling conferences and things like that. You've been actually able to get some things done, and that's great. But
Yeah,
then you also had stuff in your house just fall apart, which
yeah.
is not great.
No,
You've
I'm
been
still
busy.
trying to figure that one out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
It's
life, right?
hurry up and wait on the insurance company. Hurry up and wait on contractors. It's my house is still a mess, but
Yeah.
I'm still functioning, so that's good.
Yes, that is good. We're glad you're with us today. We love having you with us. I love to kind of throw some ideas at you since you have been there since the beginning. I think I was a wee little lad whenever you were doing all the work you were doing in Florida and I was in Alabama. So we didn't necessarily benefit from all the work that you do, but having a child growing up in that moment's perspective is a little different than the parent, having the parent's perspective. There's I think a lot more anxiety that you guys carried than we did as kids. Sometimes I think we would pick up on it, but I think in a lot of ways you guys were carrying the burden, and what you did, what all of the moms did and dads. Let me not give credit to the dads too, but there was a lot of difficult choices, and some people are back making some of those difficult choices, and they feel um, maybe confused or scared, or it's not yet normal. It used to be normal for all of human history. It was normal to just teach your own kids, but it's not yet normal again. And so there's a lot. I'm thinking of the gentleman from Alachua County who spoke up at the school board meeting. I was on an interview with Sam Sorbo this past weekend. I don't know when it'll air. When it does, we'll put it out to all of our channels and let people know where they can watch it. It was a great interview with her. She's fantastic, very vocal, outspoken, and strong-minded homeschooling mom who kind of puts it out there for people to consider. And I love that she's, with her and Kevin's status, they are pushing homeschooling in the public eye. 6% of people, I think, home educate. Yeah, that's the other 96%. Maybe don't even know it's an option or
Right.
hear about those weirdos. So she plays a key role in helping kind of get the word out and things like that normalized. So we had a great conversation, and we were talking about at a certain part we were talking about this Alachua County father who stood up at the school board meeting and expressed how can I say this, disdain for the current school board administrator and school board chair, and it was immediately met with almost a mob from the group that was with him, and then being thrown out. And I have a couple of the videos and other things like that queued up for us to look at. Uh, but essentially, it prompted this response from our Commissioner of Education, Anastasios. I don't know how to say his last name. We call him Stasi, and he tells us to call him that because it's just easier. So I'm going to call him Stasi. Our new Commissioner of Education, Stasi, says if Alachua County School Board thinks they're going to violate parents' First Amendment rights at a school board meeting, they're in for a rude awakening. And he posts a letter recommending that the amount of their salaries for the school board actually be withheld from the district as a whole until they fix this situation where they took this parent who expressed an opinion during the open community comments and then was thrown out for those comments. And I could actually hear the attorney, or not, I couldn't hear the attorney. I heard someone in the background saying, wait, 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 the attorney recommends that we don't do this. And I'm like, of course the attorney would recommend that. Um, so it was interesting to see how all that played out. And Sam and I were talking about this, and the father, I guess, had spoken with her. They had somehow connected, and he had asked about homeschooling. And or she asked him about homeschooling, and he was like, "Yeah, I would do it. I don't. Where do you begin? You know, how does that even work? Are they gonna come? Are they gonna come get your kids? Are they gonna come? There were just lots of unknowns, and it reminded me of what I know the early parents went through. It's still not yet normal. As much as we're a little bit more comfortable than we used to be hiding our kids in closets, so that they shoving them down in the floorboard when we're driving places. No, our kids are not here. I do remember that a little. It's a little bit more normal than that, but we're not yet there to the place where it's the norm again. That your kids are yours and not creatures of the state, as Pierce versus Society of Sisters states and claims. I think that's very important. And I'd like to kind of chat a little bit about, I don't know if you want to talk about this situation or just talk in general about what it is, how it's set up, and what it is that parents' rights are. And, I'd love to kind of dive into this for the sake of any parents like him who are curious, after seeing something like this, they're curious about, can I do it? Our last one last week, if you didn't catch it, that'd be episode 97. We were talking about how hard is it to homeschool, or is it really that hard? And we dove into that. So we're not going to dive into that today. If you want it, it was a great conversation. Thank you again for that, Brenda. But maybe to this week, I'd like to talk about for something that's shareable for our community. If they have friends that are thinking about it, let's talk to them about how it works. What is required of them. What does it look like? And since you helped write it, I'll hand it over to you and say, Brenda, how does it work?
Well, when we started this, we wanted the right for parents to teach their own children. There were some other ideas about how to do it. Under a private school, you could just register, but we wanted it to be way more free than just having to be under somebody else. So it was a pretty hard fought battle, but eventually we had enough people across the state that were already home educating their children that began calling their legislators, and we created enough interest that the legislators allowed us to create a way to meet regular compulsory attendance equal to a public or private school, parochial, private tutor, and then in that list, which now is 7 things, but initially we were the 5th way to meet compulsory attendance. So it just says a home education program meets regular attendance, and then we had to define what kind of accountability was going to be there, because the state was a little concerned about all these parents that might just pull their children out and do nothing. So we put in the minimum that we could come up with. First of all, we had people register their program with the superintendent so that the superintendent would know that we were legally educating our children at home and not to send out the truant officer. That was a big deal. The second.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. You wanted to say something.
I was just going to say that still might sound scary, to some people, like, oh, I have to tell the county everything I'm doing. I have to register with the superintendent and tell the county everything. Where do I go from there? They're going to check my attendance records. Like, how do I do this? Keep going.
Okay. So we carved out a lot of those kind of questions, and in statute, this followed in a couple of years later, but we said that keeping attendance records did not apply to a home education program, because we convinced the legislators that education takes place all day, every day, if your children are with you. And just putting them in those hours that are school hours was not the freedom that we were looking for. So we decided that you needed to keep your records in case there was ever a question about whether you were providing an education, not what kind of education, not according to the state uh, standards or benchmarks, but customized to your child. So, so you keep a portfolio showing the kind of activities, but you see how general it is. A list of books and educational activities, say they're working in workbooks, but those aren't ones that you have to have. They're just samples that you would prove that you were providing some type of educational program. And then that was put in there because my husband was a defense attorney, and he knew that if we had to go to court and defend our home education program, if parents weren't required to keep records, they wouldn't. And I know every home education parent out there would agree with that. If you didn't have
Yeah,
to, you wouldn't, because it's
certainly.
cumbersome. But they don't
Yeah.
have to be detailed, and they don't have to be really cumbersome. In fact, as the child gets old enough, you can have
Hmm.
them keep their own records. So a
And could I
simple
chime
child,
in there?
sure,
Crystal, you have, for the people who are listening, you have a very easy way that you keep our records for our kids. Do you want to mention that real quick before we move
Sure.
forward?
So I do keep some actual physical copies of things just because I wanted to, but I
Mhm.
also take pictures. And that way, if I need to purge stuff to kind of scale down what I'm storing, I keep a Google photo album for each school year. And I'm able to take pictures not just of their actual work, like I take close up pictures of the work, but also of my kids at the table doing stuff. And so it's a kind of a dual purpose, like a record to satisfy the requirements, but also it's like an album for me for the future. I can look back at all the stuff we did because I'm taking pictures of the kids, not just keeping the samples of the work. Like I said, for
Mhm.
sentimental purposes, I do keep some physical samples of things. And during the school year, I do keep the physical samples. And then at the end, I decide what I'm keeping and what I might just want to snap some pictures of. So that has made it really easy because I just keep my phone with me. And when we're schooling, I just snap a few pictures each day of what we're doing that day. And
Yeah, I
so
think that
then I have a portfolio that I'm making as I go, but it's very low effort. And I have something that I could easily send a link to anyone who needed to see it. And even this probably is something we'll get into later, but even though our kids are on the PEP program now, so we're not required to keep one, I still do it because I want those records if we ever switch back to home education. I want to have those.
yes,
And in case anything ever changes with the laws for PEP, I want to have the record, the proof that we've been schooling. So,
yes.
but yeah, it makes it super easy if you do it that way. Um, Maybe not everyone would want to digitize, but
Hmm.
if you're feeling overwhelmed by the thought of a portfolio, that's something to consider. Is it just makes it super easy.
Yeah, and I think that in our world of social media technology and things like that, where that wasn't super popular back when this was put together, those weren't ways conceptualized of how to keep the portfolio, and so that's not historically how people have thought of doing it. But it is one of the ways that you can do it that makes it so much easier because they're things you're already used to doing, taking pictures of your kids doing this or taking pictures of your kids doing that. Just save them in a certain place where you
Yeah.
can
You can even
keep
take
them.
videos, and that makes it even better because, like, if
Yeah,
my kids are reciting something, I record a video. So I've
yeah,
got
or
all of
reading
those
aloud.
records if I ever need to show
Hmm.
that to anyone.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that because I think stuff like that is going to give people a greater sense of ease about the all the things that are nebulous and scary about what might be required of them if we do this thing that I've never done before or thought of before. I know that school is the way and that's the only way for everybody, right? How do we do this? So dislodging from that system mindset and being able to go, and envision what it might look like if I do that. This is helpful, I think, in putting together ways for people to see it and see how free and easy it can be, and that the law backs that up. So, Brenda, keep rolling.
well, I think that's a good uh, addition to what we were talking about, because the law doesn't specify what your portfolio should look like. It just says you have to keep samples. It could be digital, it could be hard copies, but no, there's nothing spelled out, because we wanted this to be as parent friendly as possible. You do need to keep it for 2 years. And again, that was something that my husband wanted us to do, so that we did have records and he could defend us if we needed to. So you don't have to keep it longer than that. But one of the things that I could encourage you to do is, if you're not making a transcript for your children in high school, you might want to keep it longer than 2 years, because when you get to the college level, and some colleges say, I want to see what you studied.
Right.
Well, if you have to think back 4 years, you might not be able to recall everything.
Right.
So that's a good reason to maintain your records, however you keep your records.
And I think that's a great point, because a lot of the times the newcomers and staff or things like that might be not as knowledgeable about the 2-year gap. I know that I've spoken with some districts that weren't aware of how long a parent had to keep the record. Don't you have to keep it for the whole school time? And the answer is no, actually. So when they're working with parents in the district, it's important for parents to know the limitations that the district has on what they can ask you for, because they can ask you. let me back up. There aren't limitations on what the district can ask you for and request of you. There are limitations on what they can demand of you. And so that is a very important line to know where that line exists as a parent. And going through this, I think, is critical to hashing out that line, so parents can stand firmly and go, yeah, you don't get anything more than the 2 years. Thanks. You don't need that.
Can we hop back up really quick to point one, the log? Because this is a question that, I've discussed with new parents plenty of times before, that word contemporaneously. So you can make, and not every parent does, I'm not saying you need to, but you can make your lesson plans for the whole year ahead of time, but that won't count as a log. The contemporaneously is they want you to be logging what you're actually doing each day, not what you planned. And that, again, can feel overwhelming. But I found lots of simple ways to do it. Sometimes I make my plan for the week, and then we don't always get to everything, because I am way over optimistic in my planning all the time. And so what I do is I highlight what we do and write the date next to it. And so it's super fast. If you make a plan, you don't have to then keep a separate log. You can just note on your plan what you did when, and you have a log. The other thing I've done in the past is pull up a notes app on my phone. And at the end of our, learning for the day, I just bullet point what we did that day. And then later I can compile that and copy it into some kind of log. So there's lots of ways to do it that make it feel less overwhelming than having to physically pull out your logbook and write down exactly what you did every day. And I don't go super detailed either. You don't necessarily have to write the exact pages you covered. You just need to have, today we did math using this book, we read this book, we did, just something that you can look back at and show proof of the progress that was made day by day through your year.
That's great. And I think that's important that parents know that, because it does need to be done alongside of them. But like you were saying, it can be easy. You're going on field trips and you're already taking pictures. Save some in that folder.
And that's
contemporary.
That's one way that if you do the Google photo album, it can kind of serve as both. And then later, if you needed to go back and look through your photos, it'd be easy enough to compile a log if someone wanted a written log, just by kind of scrolling through your photos of what you did each day. So,
all right, Brenda. So we're not in attendance, and they don't know what we're doing, so we have to keep a portfolio. But then what?
But I want to say something about the contemporaneous.
Okay, go back.
We put that word in there so that you could catch the teachable moments. Whatever that happens to be. It doesn't have to be in a plan. You don't have to provide plans. You don't even have to tell the district what books you're using. But as you go along, you just document what you did, and it's contemporaneous with the learning. So
that's a great point, because that phrase contemporaneous, and they see the log, it can feel burdensome. But in reality, it's freedom because you don't have to make your plan ahead of time. You can just jot down at the end of the day what you did. So.
Right. Okay, I want to go back up to the
Okay.
first section because you brought up a point that, whoa, let's see. It's on B and it's the second sentence. Because you were talking about what they can ask, but we don't have to deliver. The only thing that has to be delivered, you can see in A, the notice must be in writing, signed by the parent, and including the full name, legal name, address, and birth dates of all the children.
That's how you start.
Okay, then the second thing is, and what your point was that second sentence. We had to add this because some districts were mandating things that were not required by law. So this law has been tweaked a little bit as we've gone along in years, because some of the districts, even though they were very demanding in the first years, we had to keep pointing out what we had to give. So some of them said, yeah, I know that, but I still want. And so we couldn't make the district quit. We met with them. We had HSLDA came in. They were just adamant. They came to presentations that I made on the law, and they said, but we think, and I said, but you can't, right? Face to face. So
I have met the but we think.
Yeah, I said, well, if you keep asking for that, we'll have to change the law. So the next year, we put the phrase in, the district may not require any additional information or verification from the parent unless the student chooses to participate in a school district program or service. So if you keep your children completely away from the public school, they can only ask you what's in that first paragraph. Now, they want a cell phone number, they want an email.
Right.
You know, I don't really
vaccination
have a problem
records.
if you want to give it to them, because occasionally there may be a reason they need to get in touch with you, but that's entirely up to you. The law does not require that.
Right. And I will add a caveat to that. For the purpose of participation in public school sports, you have to do the physicals that are required of all students to do a physical, and there are things like that you will have to do whenever it comes to accessing something else that all the other students also get to access. But for the purposes of this, setting it up and maintaining your home education program, no.
And you do not have to give them a social security number. Some districts want that, but they can assign a random number to your student for their computer. So
that's correct.
If they say we need your child's social security number, go, no.
That's correct. That's a great point. Great point. Home education students do get an identification number within the system. So you do not have to provide them with your social security number. That's correct. Great.
I wanted to jump back to that first sentence in paragraph B.
Okay.
Because, and we hit on this a couple weeks ago, but the district school superintendent shall accept the notice and immediately register the home education program upon receipt of the notice. You're not asking permission from the district to home educate.
Good. That's right.
Because, like I said, this came up a couple weeks ago. It was a conversation I had at one of the conferences we were at. But some parents think that they are waiting for permission. When they've submitted that, they're waiting for approval, and then they can. No, it says right here in the law that shall means that they can't tell you no.
Must. That's great. They must.
They have to accept the notice and register your student as a home education student. So you don't have to wait to hear back for approval from them. Some counties may not even get back to you. I mean, it'd be nice to have a confirmation they received it, but you're not waiting for approval.
Right.
Do keep your letter of intent, though.
Yeah. It's a good idea, too. It's not legally required that you do, but it's a good idea.
It's a good protection to keep it. Yes.
We ran into a recent situation where a college was asking for the parents' letter of intent, and they couldn't produce it. So we had to have this argument about how it's not required that the parent keep it, and for record keeping, and on and on and on. So that we often have to advocate behind the scenes for parents, and that parent whose student was already enrolled in classes was about to be ejected. We're still working on that case, but they're wondering if they're going to be ejected from that school. And we have been arguing with them that it isn't legally required for them to keep that on file, and it's not something that they have to produce to you, and it's not something that they're required by statute to produce for admission purposes, and all of these things. And unfortunately, I mean, not unfortunately or not, I don't know. The parent will never know that we were behind the scenes trying to help fix or advocate for this, because we get involved as we get roped in through email chains with our different contacts with the districts or the Department of Education, and we weigh in behind the scenes and advocate for the parents and help them find the right statutes and combine all of the wording that's necessary. But that's one of the reasons why I think it's so hard for us to raise support, is that a lot of the work that we do is unseen. It's completely unseen. So, but it's important nonetheless. And okay, so your district school superintendent shall accept the letter of intent or the notice. I think it's important also to note here that begins the date. That sets the date for what your annual evaluation will be. So annual evaluation is one of the things that does come next. Brenda, if you want to talk about kind of the idea behind the annual evaluation and the options for that, because a lot of parents will go, okay, great, so that's how I get started, and that's what I can do, and that's how easy it is to set it up, and don't give them too much information. I get all of that, but how do they know we're schooling our kids? Like, what is there? Are there tests that we have to take? Is there, what's all that about?
I'm going to answer that question, but I'm going to make a comment before.
Okay.
You don't have to register your intent every year. You register your intent, and then you terminate your program when you're ready to go to college or back into a regular school, or change to the PEP program,
Also,
or whatever. But you're in charge. You tell them you're going to be doing this, and then you tell them when you're finished. So a lot of people say, well, they have to turn one of those in every year. No, you start the program and you terminate. Okay.
Great point.
So how did we get all of these? Well, can I tell a history story?
Sure. Let's say what they are first, and then let's just kind of hit them. I've got them up on screen. Okay. So we have to keep the portfolio, and then F, provide an annual educational evaluation in which is documented the student's demonstration of educational progress at a level commensurate with his or her or his ability. So that's what you have to do. And then there are different ways that you can go about doing that. One is a teacher selected by the parent shall evaluate the student's educational progress upon review of the portfolio and discussion with the student. Such teacher shall hold a valid regular Florida certificate to teach academic subjects at the elementary or secondary level. So that's one way, is a teacher evaluation of the portfolio and discussion with the student. The second way is the student shall take any nationally normed student achievement test administered by a certified teacher. Number 3, a student shall take a state student assessment test used by the school district and administered by a certified teacher at a location and under testing conditions approved by the school district. That's number 3 as an option. And then 4, the student shall be evaluated by an individual holding a valid active license pursuant to provisions 490. I believe that is psychology. Is it psychiatry or psychology? A psychologist. And then number 5, the student shall... Psychiatrist. Okay. Number 5, the student shall be evaluated with any other valid measurement tool as mutually agreed upon by the school district superintendent of the district in which the student resides and the student's parent. Okay, so those are the 5 options.
One
Pick
of
one.
those.
Just one. You don't have to do all 5.
And you don't have to do the same one every year either. You can each year you can choose how you want to do this.
Also true.
Yeah. Actually, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Because if your child doesn't do well on a standardized test, then you might not want to give them another test score for the following year where he doesn't do very well.
So I was such a bad test taker that my professor in one of my professors in college actually called me to office hours and orally gave me the test. He would go back through the questions and treat me like I was an idiot and go, well, then why did you mark this? And why did you mark that? If you know the answers, why did you mark this? And I'm like, I don't know, Professor Pettigrew. I don't know, Dr. P. And so he would kind of help me out by adjusting that so that it didn't look as bad on paper. But I was really bad at test taking. So that is a valid concern that is possible to be very bad at tests and not be a moron.
True. There's testing anxiety, all kinds of things that affect the outcome of a test.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
So we have a very vague standard in the home education law. Educational progress commensurate with his or her ability.
Mm-hmm.
That was the Department of Education heard that this was happening across the states where HSLDA was working to make homeschooling legal in other states. So they decided they wanted to have a jump start on this. And actually, it was their bill that we ended up changing to what the law is now. Because their bill, which was sponsored by Representative Walt Young from Brevard County, he ended up being on our side before it was all over after he met the children and the people. But he was representing the department's bill. And so the lady who kind of instigated this was a special ed teacher. And so she didn't want a specific test score marking a child's progress. She wanted that children who had learning disabilities could be included in the standards. So she came up with that. It was the Department of Education. And so we kept that standard because we felt like the only person that could actually determine what that child's ability was the number 4, a psychiatrist or a psychologist. And that was what their bill was. That's F. And then under F, they had only number 4.
Okay.
So we said, well, what about if we have a certified teacher look at our portfolio? Well, and we went through each one of these things so that parents that wanted testing, they could take either an Iowa Basic or Standard Achievement. That's what number 2 is.
So
and
let me understand the original, like first option version, and didn't include anything but the licensed psychiatrist to evaluate.
Yes.
Wow.
And so the Department of Education commissioner was not happy that this bill passed. And we attended a meeting that he had after the session with the truant officers, and he was explaining the law to them. And he said, well, we thought if we could just have a licensed psychologist or a psychiatrist evaluate the child, then we could pull their license if they made any child pass.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. You can see God's hand in this because the lady at the lower level dealing with this, and remember, there was no home education law at that point. Parents who had their children a, quote, private school, which now we call them umbrella schools, were being prosecuted. So she inserted this for parents teaching their children at home, which was only God's hand in that. I can't say we took credit for that at all.
What a moment. That is mind-boggling. And this is why I think it's so important to do these things, because parents need to know the history. They need to know that very thin moment where you just narrowly escape something disastrous, because it lost and forgotten when not kept in the pages of history somehow. And when it's forgotten, it's very easy to take for granted and not have the right amount of gratitude or the right amount of respect and awe for what it is that we're a part of and that we
Or to
participate
accidentally stumble back into the
in.
same pitfalls that were happening back then, because a change to the statute that on the surface seems reasonable, but then behind the scenes the motive is, well, we'll just pull the license of anybody who's going to approve them.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so as we met with legislators, we were showing my portfolio, which was not a beautiful piece of, or a beautiful document.
You didn't have glitter and sequins and flexible pop-up book parts. And
No, but guess what? They didn't even want to look at it. I even
Yeah.
took it with me when we met with the governor who
Not
signed this into statute. They kept saying, well, how are we going to know they're being educated? And I kept saying, a portfolio. Here's a portfolio. Do you want to see a
I can show
portfolio?
you. Yeah.
No, thank you. No, we believe you. I don't have time.
Didn't
What
want
does
to
that
see
mean? Ain't nobody got time for that.
And as a side note here,
Yeah.
not too many years after the homeschool law passed, Pinellas County was demanding to see all of the parents' portfolios. Well, they came in with little red wagons full of books and documents and projects and everything in paper. And they had filled up the walls in the halls with all these things. And finally they go, oh my gosh, they're doing such a great job. We're not going to bother them anymore. And then
Yeah.
Orange County decided to pull the same thing a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And parents were like, oh gosh, I got to take my portfolio. I said, don't worry, just take your portfolios in. And again, all the stuff that they came bringing in, the lobbyist came to me and he said, do we have to do this? And I said, no, the law doesn't require you to look at them. He said, are you sure? So
Yes.
I pointed out what the law said, and he went back and talked to the attorney. He said, we're not calling that in again, ever. So
Yes.
sometimes showing your stuff is a good thing. You know, you
Yeah.
back those counties off because they don't know what you're doing. But when you're
Mhm.
bringing all these projects and workbooks and papers and everything, now it would be fantastic to get to show them videos. But, you know, we didn't have that back then. Anyway, so I think that standard is nothing short of a God moment where the person in the department whose boss was saying, we're going to get them, you know, with the psychologist, she insisted that be a standard. And we go, oh, that's pretty good standard. We like that one. All you have to do is show you've made progress from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And that's what the annual evaluation is supposed to do.
Yeah, it's so important to understand the law. I think it's also it's worth noting here that a teacher selected by the parent shall evaluate the student's educational progress upon review of the portfolio. We had a parent who was doing portfolio reviews for their community and their own child, who was also taking classes at FLVS, like a mixture. And there was kickback, like, oh, you can't do your own child's evaluation. Actually, technically, by law, you can. It's not advisable because you're raising eyebrows by not having the idea is that you have a teacher that's a third party objective observer look at it and discuss it with your kid and go, okay, cool, you showed progress. And you're kind of fudging the line on that one, but technically, you can. It's just one of those things that as you get further on and further on, and you want to get into college, your student wants to get into college or do this, they may want to see, well, something a little bit more objective and outside of just the parent. My parent said I did a good job, so keep that in mind.
But all the parent has to do is sign an affidavit. So
That's true.
They
Yes,
don't
yes.
even have to show the evaluations. And when the law
No, they
first
don't.
passed, there were two provisions. One was if you were a certified teacher and you were teaching your children, you didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to register. You didn't have to keep a portfolio. If you're a certified teacher, you could just do it. Eventually, we took that out and just made it that anybody, any parent could do it. And so as far as the evaluation is concerned, if you have a valid certificate,
Mm-hmm.
You can evaluate your children. I
Yeah.
think in high school, Jason's got a good point, but I don't think in elementary, junior high, that there's really, but
Yeah.
still you can do it in high school. That's what the law says.
Mm-hmm. It does say that. Yeah. And I just wanted parents to be aware of that, kind of nuance.
Can I just add something to this discussion real quick?
No. Yes.
If you're brand new to this and you're not, you don't have a lot of friends in the home education community yet, you might be like, how do I find a certified teacher? Do I have to contact the local public school and ask them to loan me one? Like, how do I do this? So I just want to reassure you that in the homeschooling community in Florida, across the state, there are lots of certified teachers who are either very homeschool friendly and are friends with lots of homeschoolers and are willing to do this, or who are home educating parents themselves and have intentionally maintained their license so that they can continue to offer portfolio reviews.
And how might they find some of those?
Well, I was going to say, if you need help connecting with any of those, you can hop into our Discord server, because we have channels in there for helping connect people in their counties with those kinds of other parents who have the ability to do portfolio reviews or can refer you to a good portfolio reviewer that they've used. So,
yes.
Is there a channel for just evaluators?
There is, in fact, a channel just for evaluators. In fact, if you're an evaluator, it's a good time to plug this. If you're an evaluator and you want to join, you can put your information in the evaluators channel, and you are able to, it is locked only for evaluators who are participating. So your information doesn't get bumped all the way up and disappeared. So it's a place where people can look and browse and see you, put what county that you're in and things like that. And then beneath that, there's actually an interaction channel where someone can say, hey, I'm looking for an evaluator, and anyone can respond from those evaluators can respond into that and say, hi, I can help you, or I'll, what kind of questions do you have, and take it from there. And then furthermore, there are 3 or 4, maybe even 5 open voice communication channels where an evaluator can connect with you in those, and you can do screen sharing and video calling right there within that channel platform. And
yeah, I wanted to clarify just on that point. There's nothing in the law that I'm aware of that says it has to be an in-person discussion and portfolio review. So there are
nor do they have to be in your county.
Right. So there are some in our Discord who, even if they don't live in your county, you could hop in a Discord video call with them, screen share some stuff, let them see your digital portfolio. They could chat with your kid for the discussion part, and it can all be done virtually. You don't even have to meet in person with them. So
that's right. And that's a tool that we have set up at no cost to parents. We don't get a percentage of a deal or anything like that. It's just to help you facilitate finding that, having the confidence, and connecting with people. So
yeah,
that
and
is
just
there
a reassurance if there's not a large gathering of certified teachers in your county. You don't have to worry. You can find one in a different county. It doesn't have to be someone from your county.
Great point.
I mean, you're beginning to see, if you're listening to this, how much work goes on behind the scenes, and it's all for the benefit of keeping the law free, helping parents do the job that they need to do without interference from public officials. And it's worth, may I say, $10 a month for your freedom to be protected. It's really worth way more than that. But just to a cup of coffee or 2 cups of coffee a month, depends on where you go to get your coffee. But for protecting the freedom for your children. And Crystal and Jason spend hours every week responding to parents that need help. Not only that, handling all of the computer information that he's just talked about. Somebody's got to answer all those questions. And thank you, Crystal, for handling most of them. Jason kind of takes the heavy ones, but and keeps plowing through till we get answers. But people, if you want to keep a freedom in Florida, you need the Home Education Foundation. And that boils down to basically now Jason and Crystal. And I carried the load almost by myself for 40 years.
40 years.
With help. But
yeah.
Is time worth something? Absolutely it is. Is your freedom worth something? Absolutely it is. And let me just say, without us in the Capitol, any of these words can be changed in any session in a great big bill, and you come out of there and go, oh, how did that happen? Because nobody was watching for you.
Yeah, that's a great, I mean, even in the stories that you've told today, where the way that the original bill for the portfolio, not for the evaluations started, I wasn't aware of that. I've seen the bills we've worked on so far, and I've seen a bunch of the other bills start where they started, and then watch them like hawks, because the language in them changes quick, and then gets voted on, and then gets made into law unless vetoed.
And sometimes the one that we've been working on is rolled into a bigger bill at the end. And so you've got this whole massive bill that you got to make sure your language didn't get changed. And that usually happens near the end of session. And it's really hard to keep up with what's going on. You got to be eyes on all of the legislation to make sure. Or even
like now, there's conversations and meetings and planning and workshopping that we're a part of. They go into the planning portions of this with talking with representatives and figuring out what their committee assignments are going to be, and who they're talking to, and who they think is important, and what bills they're thinking about working on, and giving them input so that we get there and get the language there. Or, hey, did you know about this? They don't know about the history of this stuff either. So a lot of times it comes down to, man, just trying to break into their world and be noticed and start that conversation and let them know what they're about to touch or be a part of or alter in some way, and ask them to do it better or don't do it at all sometimes. It is a absolute constant. There will be days where Crystal's like, hey, maybe we could take the kids to the beach today. And I'll be like, yeah, sure. And no, I'm busy. Constant.
Yeah, very quickly he gets swamped with calls and messages that have to be handled. Because when something, that's a good point. Is there's a lot happening behind the scenes, even when it's not legislative session. So there's, if Jason is not part of those conversations, then who knows what's going to emerge whenever it's time for all of the bills to be introduced.
I get calls from the districts all the time. There are 67 districts. That's a lot of calls and a lot of parents. That's one of the reasons why we made Discord, so that instead of having to reply to 100 emails, I could have that conversation once, and 100 people can benefit from getting the answer. And so that was just being more efficient was one of those ideas. If you're in the home education community and you're in Florida, and by the way, that's a server for Florida. That is not for all the other states. It's great that people elsewhere homeschool, but this is specifically for Florida parents. So if you're a homeschooler in Florida and you're not in our Discord, I really highly recommend that you get in there. We get links to things, cited sources, statutes. We're not there to give our opinions about things. We want to answer questions that parents have and give them accurate, direct answers.
And there is not a paywall to get into the Discord. Nope. Like some companies, in order to have access to Discord, you have to be at a certain subscription tier or whatever. We highly encourage parents to support financially and to be, monthly supporters, but we're not putting any of these resources or information behind a paywall, because we don't ever want that to be a reason that a parent doesn't have accurate information or resources. So
yeah. All right. I think this is a great little tangent for that. Let's maybe zone back in for these parents who are new, and let's say, what if they don't like, what if I had a bad situation at the public school or whatever, and I decided to pull, like this gentleman in Alachua County, and I had to pull my kids Can they target me? What if they don't accept the results of my evaluation and say I'm not educating my kids? What then? I think this line is super important in the statute. The statute, by the way, is 1002.41. That's the home education statute we were talking about. It says the school district superintendent shall accept the results of the annual educational evaluation of the student in a home education program. They have to take the results. They do. It's right there in statute. If the student does not demonstrate educational progress, so if on the evaluation it states that they didn't show progress commensurate with his or her ability, the school district superintendent shall notify the parent in writing that such progress has not been achieved. That's the if statement. It connects what comes next. The parent shall have 1 year from the date of the receipt of the written notification to provide remedial instruction to the student in order to remedy, basically, that they didn't show progress. And at the end of the first year, or the 1 year probationary period, the student shall be reevaluated as specified in subparagraph 1F. Continuation in a home education program shall be contingent upon the student demonstrating educational progress commensurate with his or her ability at the end of the probationary period. This is very important to realize that this is just if you're working with a certified teacher and they mark that the student didn't show progress.
Well, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
The parent's an idiot if they turn it in. Let me just make that clear.
Yeah. Well,
because the parent is supposed to submit the annual evaluation. If you get a bad teacher, which you might, if they don't understand home education.
Yes, if they don't
get a different one.
Yes.
Until you find an evaluation, an evaluator that understands your child's learning style and, you know, his abilities as far as whether he's got disabilities in learning or whatever. If that part about the probation never happen.
Right. That's right. That big if statement right there. That big if statement is key. It doesn't state that the first evaluation that you do is the only evaluation you're allowed to do, and you must turn in that evaluation. That's not what it says.
Yeah.
So all you need to do.
I want to add something to that real quick on as it relates to testing scores, because 2 of the options are standardized test options.
Okay.
And there is the potential if you submit a test score 1 year and then a test score the next year that is worse than the previous year, that they could argue you haven't shown progress. So if you are a parent who wants the standardized test results but doesn't want to open that can of worms, what we've done in the past is I still use a certified teacher and do a review. And she looks at my kids' test results as part of her portfolio review process. But still, all that then is going to the county is her 1-page signed report that they've made progress, right?
That's
so
right.
You don't have to give your test scores just because you take a test. You don't have to give those test scores to the county if you don't want to open up the possibility for them to be comparing from 1 year to the next and trying to argue that your kid, because they had a bad day and didn't test well, that they somehow didn't make progress. So
you know what? It might be good maybe next week to try, or in one of the coming weeks to try to get one of our evaluators on here who is one of our supporters. I was thinking of Kimberly from the Homeschool Hive. They're such wonderful supporters, and she does so many evaluations for home education families in their area, and just to help put people's minds at ease. What's in one? What does it look like when they turn it in? How does that work? And I think that might be good. We might do that in the near future. So that's a great point, though, Crystal. So I'm glad you brought that up.
There may be times when parents really do drop the ball. And so that paragraph could be used if a parent just doesn't do anything during the year and a teacher sees that. I have known teachers that would turn into the county that this parent hasn't provided an education. So the thing about our law in Florida is there's just barely enough accountability in it that we can argue for additional rights that we, over the years, gotten in Florida. Well, how are they going to get into a dual enrollment program? Well, we argue that there's accountability there. and some states say, well, we don't have to do anything. Well, how many rights do you have as a result of not doing anything? All we have to do is tell them that we're homeschooling. Well, they may not have extracurricular activities. They may not have dual enrollment, but it's not onerous accountability. It's just barely enough to keep parents accountable.
It really is not onerous. I mean, we've been home educating even before we switched to PEP, where the annual requirements are a little different. We were home educating for like 7 years, and it was never overly burdensome to keep the records and to do the tests. Like it's really not. And I also just want to reiterate that there is a 1-year probationary period. They can't just look at your results and go, oh, you're not allowed to home educate anymore. So if something does go really off for a year, maybe you have some serious health issues or a family crisis, and you just have a really off year and you get a not so favorable review from a teacher, you still have a year to remediate that and to show proof that you are again making progress. They cannot immediately just force you to quit home educating.
We're running over our budget on time. I want to be mindful of everyone who's watching's day and our normal kind of podcast time slot, but I don't want to overrush it either. But I want to kind of move forward a little bit and highlight for the parents, those newbies who are scratching their head, going, can I do this? What does it entail? What are my requirements? Is it difficult? It's scary. I'm not a part of the system anymore, or am I? What can they do to me? What are my options? I think you also would be spend a little bit of time looking at 1002.41 and take a look at from 3 onward, because this is a great list of, coming from other states where they might say something like, well, I come from whatever state and I didn't have to do anything to homeschool. It's like, okay, great, but you probably didn't have all of these things either. A lot of these things coming next are some of the great benefits of being a home education student in Florida. One, it's spelled out that a home education program shall be excluded from meeting the requirements of a school day. So it isn't school. It doesn't have to look like school.
It doesn't have to be the same amount of hours, even the same amount of days. Yeah.
The requirements of a school day are not upon your child. So your education, your home education program, doesn't have to legally look anything like school or a school day. You're free to do it your own way. And there is something I want to talk about in a minute about that before we sign off. But home education students can also participate in interscholastic extracurricular student activities in accordance with the provisions of 1006.15, the Brenda Dickinson Act. That means they can play sports, they can join chess club, they can do the robotics team program, there's a lot of those things that they can. People say, well, why don't your kids don't socialize? Well, one, I don't want my kids to socialize on social media and get TikTok brain. But 2, they can still play all the sports and jump in there and learn about team cohesion and unit cohesion and team play and, who's the quarterback, who's the receiver, and they get all the benefits of all of that kind of stuff, which is great. Home education students may participate in the Bright Futures Scholarship Program. So the scholarship program that's available to students in the state of Florida is also available to a homeschooling student. So enjoy. Home education students may participate in dual enrollment programs. Your kids showing progress early, you want to get in there and allow them to start taking some college classes through dual enrollment, by all means. That's now also available to them for the colleges participating in that. Some private colleges do, and then the public college system does. So a home education student is eligible for admission to Florida college system institutions in accordance with the provisions in 1007.263. This is one of the things we were arguing about with the college, the Reason College that we were talking about. I don't want to name them. The home education students are eligible for admission to state universities in accordance with the policies and guidelines of the Board of Governors. Number 9, testing and evaluation services. This is great. Testing and evaluation services at diagnostic and resource centers shall be, this is the must language, available to home education program students, including but not limited to students with disabilities in accordance with the provisions of 1006.03. That's so important, especially since there are so many parents who feel that their student is not getting the proper educational care and attention or customized education that their student with a disability needs. And so these diagnostic, I'm going to say it wrong, so I don't want to say it wrong. The education related services, where testing, oh, there it is. I had highlighted a new one already. Testing and evaluation services at diagnostic and resource centers is so key to getting all of that lined up so that they can join the FESUA scholarship program and receive the additional benefits there. The school district this is important, may provide exceptional student education related services as defined in the State Board Education Rule to a home education student with a disability. So they can. 11, a school district may provide access to career and technical courses and programs for a home education student. There are so many still available options. So 12 industry certifications, national assessments, and statewide standardized assessments offered by a school district shall be available to home education students. There's another must. And then 13, this is so important. Maybe one of my favorites. A school district may not further regulate, exercise control over, or require documentation from parents of home education program students beyond the requirements of this section unless the regulation, control, or documentation is necessary for participation in a school district program. And that's where the part about school sports, if you're participating in sports and they require a physical or different things like that, they can. But beyond this, just in general, we're wanting all parents to give us their email address so that we can communicate with them easier. And we need all of the parents to send in their social security numbers for their students so that we can make sure our list is up to date and accurate. Wrong. Like all of these things, it's just knowing what your rights are, knowing what it says.
Well,
I hope that gives parents peace.
On the regulate and exercise control over side, that also means they cannot come in and tell you what curriculum you can use or what you can teach in your home. They have no authority to do that.
Great point. Before we wrap up, I wanna get to something that I've been really, it's something that's important to me. I wanted to kind of talk about because I have over the last couple of days had this picture in my head, and I have been wondering kind of how we got to this place where school is so normal. I think I know the answer, but visually I started to see this kind of graphic in my head that illustrates it. And, when you're working with a student, a child, the best way to get them to learn is diving into them, right? Like figuring out what lights their fire, really kind of honing in on them and tailoring it to them. And when you're in a school classroom, 30 students, 20 students, 25 students, it's really difficult to find the time to do that with every single student that's in there. If you spent an hour with each student and 20 students in the class, even 1 hour of attention, that's 20 hours. You're just not getting that. So if you have one student, that's one thing, right? And let's say you have another student and they're a little different. Maybe it's, the difference between a boy and a girl. And their attention spans are different early. Maybe you have another student. They're just a difference of age. Perhaps you have yet another student and they're a difference of ability. They're not yet there in the reading. And maybe another student and their parents baby talk to them and their command of language is different. And so the subtle differences in how they learn and what all of these differences do overlap. There are some things that are normal to ways that every child kind of learns. There are some things about learning and teaching and education that are similar. And then maybe you have another child. And so this area where they all overlap keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller as the classroom fills up until what you're left with that they actually have completely in common that you can teach to is this tiny little place in the middle. All of the differences in every student and the way that they learn and who they are and their makeup is so vast and broad. You have to teach only to that overlapping part because you've got them all together. You have to. Whenever you're in a home education environment where you're tailoring it to your 4 kids or your 3 kids or your 1 kid. And then they go and get their social interaction at a co-op or on field trips with people or playing the sports on, like, there's so much. You get to teach to the whole circle. You get to teach to the whole child and customize it fully in a way that in an environment where they're and this isn't even 20 circles, this is only 10 or 12. So this isn't even a sample of how small that dot actually gets. We spend so much time believing that school and this systematic approach and the experts know what they're doing and they've got it on lock and we trust it. And the truth is, they can only teach to the overlap because they have to herd them like cattle. They can only teach to that place where everybody has this in common. And well, what if they're different? What if they're pretty outlier different? They get lost. If they can't hit that middle, they just get lost. And I think that's so important to realize as a parent and to also understand the freedoms that you have. You know, you're not in a classroom with 4 walls. This is why our brand is the world is our classroom's the world. Education is always. It isn't K through 12. It's always. And lighting the fire under your children and getting them ready and formidable for walking out into life and being successful on their own is the goal. That's the goal. There are people who think they do that better than everybody else. And they think they've got a systematic way. And I'm not just talking about school. I'm talking about all of the programs, all of the curriculum providers, everybody who's smart enough to think they know everything better than everybody else. They're going to sell it to you. School's going to sell it to you. This co-op is going to sell it to you. That curriculum's going to sell it to you. And the truth is, you as the parent have the right by law to educate your own children as you see fit. And you have the freedom, the widely expansive freedom to do that. And I hope that anyone who sees this video and kind of will be emboldened and filled with confidence to go, you know, I can do this. And, you know, I have the right to, and step away, not just from school systems, but all the systems for a moment. And get out there and realize that when you can connect with your own kid 1-to-1, 1-to-2, 1-to-3, they're yours. No one will love them in this world the way that you love your own kids. Have the patience with them, hold out answers from them, pour into them at 2 a.m. when they come with crazy questions and you're like, this is important. Like, that's you. That's you. You get to do that. You're the parent. Feel free and feel confident in your choice and do it. That's it. Brenda, we're at time, and I always like to give you the wrap up. The wrap up. So, is there anything you want to add before we call it a day? Is there anything you want to add?
Well, there was a study once that I saw that said a child gets 7 minutes of individual time in a public school at most.
Wow.
7 minutes.
I mean, looking back on my public school experience, that feels pretty accurate. I'm not sure I even got 7 minutes every day, every school day.
So if you think you can't do it, they're not doing it for your individual child in a public school either.
Oh, that's...
Should I have not said that?
No, it's just one way of putting it. I didn't think of it that way. Those words
It's a striking
are powerful.
reality, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, saying it that way is very poignant, very powerful. All right, well, I'm going to take us out and wrap us up. I will say this. I'll hit it one more time before we're out of here. And there is a blog article for how this works if you want to go check it out on the information tab on our website and go to blog. The HEF Connect Fund match for August is there, and you can read the details of it. But if we do have even 50 parents who are willing to come on board at $10 a month and support the work that we do, we can qualify for that match and obtain that. And I think, stuff like that goes a huge way to helping us do the work that we do. Also, if you haven't yet done it, join our Discord. There's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of really good conversations in there. It's filling up. There is almost like 400 families roughly in there now, and it continues to grow, and it'll continue to grow. It is going to be the place where everyone's going for their accurate information. And if you want to be a part of that, you're sick and tired of hearing half truths or maybe right or not so right opinions on Facebook, and you want a place to get real answers, that it's there for you. It's there for you to join. You can join it by clicking this Discord button up here on our website, or you can navigate to the Discord on our community page and learn more about it before you dive in. There's a lot of information that's there. So, oh, my light went out. I hope that's all that went out. The let's go back to our top sponsors. I was trying to remember what we do next. Let's tell them thank you. We want to give a special thank you to Arete, FPEA, Fisher Precious Metals, and TBHC Group for being our top sponsors and being with us. Thank you again, Brenda, for being with us today. And to all of you wonderful homeschool and home education families out there, keep doing the good work. You're making sacrifices. Yeah, it's hard. It's probably the hardest thing you'll ever do. And then it's the most rewarding. And when they move out and they move on in life and they're formidable and the rooms are empty and you look back, maybe you'll wish you had a little bit more of that time. So make good memories. Make good memories. And it doesn't have to look like school. You can educate your children the way you see fit. And with that, I'll give you back your Monday.